welcome to My Stable Relationship, an equestrian performance podcast where we will deep dive into the mindset and management challenges of ourselves and of our peers. Our discussions will allow you to learn from experts, encourage you to set audacious goals, overcome challenges, and develop actionable plans. Ready? Let's do this. Hello everyone, and welcome back to My Stable Relationship. As a reminder before we get started, for the month of July, I am giving away 25 free introductory performance coaching sessions. So these sessions are perfect for any equestrian who has ever thought about performance, mindset, or life coaching. Come with a topic or just come as you are, and we will find our own way in the session. The booking link can be found in the podcast show notes or in my social media bios at Journey of Equine. Now, a quick update from this week. So my partner and I live on an old homestead in the bush in Australia, and the house itself, or actually all of the homestead, but the house itself is in need of a lot of maintenance. So with maintenance of an old house or an old homestead, you basically just have to pick a job to start on. Otherwise, you get overwhelmed by all of the jobs needing to be done. Well, I do anyway. So in November last year, we decided that one thing that was really important to us was to service the wood fire stove and fireplace, because that actually heats most of our house for us during winter. So the fireplace itself sits in the living room, but the wood fire stove in the kitchen is like the most important because we run it at night and it heats all of the bedrooms. This is so important again because Australian houses are generally built to shed heat, which means that they are good in summer, but freezing in winter. And where we live, we're up on a mountain, and in winter we get loads of -degree weather and we get some snow. So I need heating. And anyway, in November last year, we found an old master blacksmith to restore our wood fire stove, basically because it was starting to fall apart on the inside. And we didn't want to do it ourselves because we knew that it was packed with asbestos sheeting on the sides and on the back. So in Australia, you're not really meant to deal with asbestos by yourself. You're meant to get professionals in. So we sent it away. And I don't know if you know this, but it is like an old art form to restore an old cast iron topped wood fire stove. And the guy who restored it for us bought all sorts of parts from all over the world, particularly the UK where it was originally made. And we had to send it to the only place in Australia that currently re-enamels over the old cast iron parts. And it was really brought back to life from the ground up, which was amazing to see. So this week we were super excited because it was finally time for this stove to come home and be reinstalled since being away since November. And it's just getting into winter now. So I'm looking forward to having some heating. The old blacksmith who restored it for us really carefully had it wrapped and craned onto the back of a ute. And then he hired someone to drive it 3 hours back to us. And just to set the scene, this is a really heavy stove. It's a stovetop and an oven system. It weighs somewhere between 300 to 400 kilograms, which is like 660 to 880 pounds. And I know ponies that weigh less than that. And the kitchen here in our old house was basically built around the stove. So this stove has been in its position since about the 1960s. So to remove it had already been an incredibly difficult job, and now we had to put it back in. So we've got a young guy with a ute with my beautiful stove on the back, and I bet you can guess what happened. On one of the last corners out to our house, he accidentally took the turn too fast or too aggressively, and the stove toppled over. My beautiful and lovingly restored stove, with parts from all over the world, who our master blacksmith had been restoring for nearly 9 months, fell over. And even worse, it fell onto some of its parts because to transport it, all of the doors and the stovetops had actually been taken off and wrapped independently to protect them. But anyway, that wasn't the end of the ordeal. So from falling over, it's got some dents in the back plates. 2 of the screws on the top had twisted and bent out of place, which probably means that the cooktop has somehow shifted. And one of the fire bricks is cracked on the inside, but we don't really know the extent of the damage until we install it, connect it to a flue, and light a fire in it so that we can see from there. So based on that, we still needed to install it. And as you can imagine, given how heavy the stove is, it took my partner and two other people quite a lot of effort to crane it off the back of the ute and get it inside to the kitchen. And right as they were at the point of trying to slot it back into its narrow space, we realized it doesn't fit in its spot anymore. What has happened, we think, is that when the cast iron top was re-enameled, it was heated up to such a high temperature that the cast iron has bowed and changed shape. So the spot in the kitchen that the stove needs to fit in is a really, really tight space because the granite countertop was built around the stove and the stove was there first. And we never imagined that it wouldn't fit when it came back home. And then, as my partner and our two friends were trying to place it back in its spot, because it was such a tight fit with the granite bench top, the enamel on the cooking plate was chipped. And I can't even begin to tell you how much time, energy, and money we spent having that enameling done. But the straw that really broke the camel's back, and I super hope you have that saying where you're from, but it basically means the thing that pushed me over the edge of no longer being okay was that we now need to remove part of the granite countertop to get the stove in. And I have a real love of this homestead and this house and the original features. So my concern was that if we take that piece of granite out, it will never fit back in and that we will never be able to match it. But even worse, when we started to pry it out, the granite cracked. And at that point, it was too much for me. I was tired, I'm still a little bit sick, and it had just been disappointment after disappointment that day of delivery. And I wanted to tell you this story for a few reasons. Number one, no one is perfect. We are all humans having a human experience. Even those of us qualified in mindset work have days where our mind is running its own unmanaged show. And number two, it is perfectly okay for me to feel my feelings. There is this school of thought going around at the moment about positive thinking and that you can turn anything you want into a positive situation. And while I could certainly turn around now and feel more calm and more grounded about the whole day and the whole scenario, I absolutely do not have to turn it into the most positive thing ever. So I just want you to be really careful of the line between normal and toxic positivity. I'm also allowed to feel and show my feelings. And as per most things, I was really sad and I was really quite angry for about 2 minutes. And then I dusted myself off, picked myself up, and moved on. But imagine the ramifications for my body, my energy levels, or my future mindset if I had bottled that up or tried to immediately flip it to a positive. And this means, as I record this episode for you, I am actually learning to live with a massive wood fire stove in the center of my kitchen. And we have intent to resolve that over the next week or two. And that is totally okay with me now. So today's topic is, are you stuck in your own story? And it's something that's been on my mind a bit lately because it keeps popping up as a theme. I mentioned it a little bit in my trial and error podcast the other week when I spoke about some people perhaps not being able to recognize all of the opportunities for trial and error around them. And that means they're a little bit stuck in what they know and not considering other options. I've also been hearing about this a lot from my coaches recently, and it's been a great reminder for me. And then to top it all off, the other day I was listening to another podcast with Jack Ballou, who is a rehab specialist, and she said something that really hit home for me. She said, you need to ride the horse that you have on the day. Do not approach the horse every day thinking that they're at the same level of rehabilitation. And while I obviously know this and I love this principle, in practice, this is something that I can really struggle with. So since Rio ruptured his collateral ligament and he spent 3 years in extensive rehab work, I can attest to being the type of person prone to always seeing him as a rehab case and always needing to be babied. But perhaps this isn't the case, and perhaps that's a little bit me stuck in my own story. But before we get into that, let's just chat about what I mean by your story. So we all have a narrative running in our minds in every aspect of our lives. And it's basically a collection of our thoughts and our feelings from our past. And it's a collection of thoughts and feelings that we have about our future. And if we think the same thought or feel the same feeling over and over, it actually becomes a deeper part of us. It becomes something that we truly believe, something that we stop questioning, and rather something that we take as a fact. And this is when we've really turned it into our story. Now, everyone has a story, and that's not a problem. Your story will enable you to make sense of events in your life and determine what you feel is appropriate action for different situations. So, your story will actually support you at times. When we speak part of that story to someone, let's say the part of me focused on Rio's rehab, the story can often become quite long, quite emotional. Usually it's based in a struggle or confusion. And perhaps not all of the parts that I tell you will actually be relevant to the situation or the current moment. It's just that I've linked instances together in my mind previously. And we don't necessarily have to verbalize our story, but let me tell you that your coaches, equestrian or mindset, will be able to pick up on the story anyway, because you tell a story not just from what you say and how you say it, but also through your reactions, your responses, your body language, and your energy. It's actually not just you with a story in the partnership. Your horse also has a story. And we can pick up on that from their body, their marks, their movement, their facial expressions, their reaction or responses, loads of different ways. And for those of you who have been around horses, you will know that you can pick up on your horse's story. I bet so many of you can pick up whether or not your horse is okay out in the pasture just by looking at them. Or you can pick up whether or not your horse is feeling unwell just by seeing their facial and body expressions. There are instances where you just know. You can also think of a time that maybe your spouse or your child has been upset. They don't necessarily have to say anything to you in order for you to know that they're upset, but you've picked up on their story at that moment in a non-verbal way. Now, this story that we have, this collection of thoughts and feelings, is so important because once you recognize where you are, it's much easier to plan for where you want to go. Our story either propels us towards our goals or it might get us stuck in a cycle of behaviors. In reality, everyone has a story. So, what we actually want to know is if we are stuck in the story or not. To solve that, I have a couple of questions that I want you to think about. The first one is, are you meeting your goals for this quarter, this year, life, whatever? Are you meeting your goals? And I want you to answer really quickly based on feel. Is it a yes or is it a no? Perhaps your story is holding you back from doing something that you want, or it's getting in the way of something you want, from taking the leap, from being courageous, from trying something. For example, maybe you have a story that you can't go eventing because you've never run a full cross country course before. But that story is actually stopping you from reaching your goal, which is to go and run a full cross country course. Perhaps your story is that your horse is showing subtle signs of lameness, but instead of pursuing the issue and seeing if you can resolve it, the action that you take is to turn them out in the paddock. Hence, never finding the reason for the subtle signs, and hence never really knowing when you can get back to working with them and reaching your next goal. Are you meeting your goals or are you stuck in your story? So, the next question to see if you're stuck in your own story is, are you finding yourself in opposing belief systems to those around you? And this is a super interesting one. And I say it not to call anyone out because it is perfectly reasonable that you can start to develop different views, opinions, or beliefs to those around you or close to you. Or they might be developing and changing from the state that you all used to be in together. So, for example, perhaps you've always used a type of gadget to help you train or rehabilitate your horse. And so did all the other people at your barn or on your training team. But maybe over time, you've started to realize that some of the other people at the barn aren't using that gadget anymore. They're doing something else. The question is, are you finding yourself in that type of belief system opposition? And perhaps the next task then is to analyze if you are stuck in your story or not. Perhaps it's them, but your only responsibility is to you, and you are the only person that you have control over. So are you stuck in your story or not? And the last question to check if you are stuck in your own story is, are you leaning heavily on events from the past? So I basically want to know if your story is outdated or not. A great example of this is my rehab story with Rio. So he ruptured his collateral ligament in 2016. He spent 3 years on box and small paddock rest, getting treatments, being vet checked, etc. And in 2019, I mounted him for the first time since. It's now mid 2022. It's 3 years on from when I got back on him after the injury, yet I still consider him every day a collateral ligament injury risk, a survivor, or a sufferer. And again, I'm not telling you that it's right or wrong to think like this, because me considering him like that does mean that I'm not going to go flog him over a jump, right? It brings me some caution and some carefulness. But I'm telling you that you need to be aware of your story. And this is my story about Rio. And perhaps I am stuck in this story, because if we think about those dates, they're pretty outdated, aren't they? So if you said yes to any of these scenarios, not meeting your goals, in conflict with the beliefs of those around you, or your facts are outdated, you might be stuck in your story. And our actionable takeaways today are going to help you identify what your story is. But first, I'd like to offer you two thoughts that you might want to borrow. If these thoughts make sense to you, why not just try them on? So you can literally try on thoughts like you try on clothes. Give it a go this week, thinking these thoughts and see how they make you feel, and see if they help you to detach yourself slightly from your story or give you another perspective. Just try them on. The first thought that I'd like to offer you is maybe your horse isn't the problem. Rehab horse, training horse, young horse, senior horse, competition horse, whatever. Maybe your horse isn't the problem, but maybe the problem is being caused because you are stuck in your own story. My show jumping instructor kicked my butt one day at a competition. When Rio came to me, he was quite horse shy, and any horse that rode towards us in the ring or even just in the arena at home, he would jump sideways, shy sideways away from them. And this meant that I used to predict that it was going to happen, right? So as another horse would come near me, I would tense my body, clench my fists around the reins, shorten the reins if I felt I needed to. I would slow his pace. I tried to bend him away, whatever I felt was needed in order for him to not shy. But a couple of years into our competition career, we were warming up one day at the show jumping. I think it was our first like meter 20 together or something. And my instructor noticed me still doing this in the warm up ring. I'm still clenching, still tensing, watching every other horse that comes past me. And he yelled at me, Lauren, ride the horse you're on, not the horse you had. And if ever you'd like to be snapped out of a story quickly, the best place to do it is in front of loads of people in a warm up ring. Perfect way to receive advice. So I reluctantly, but relatively quickly, loosened my grip and softened as the other horses were coming past. And you know what happened? Nothing. No shying at all. Because Rio and I had been competing for 3 years already, and that time of shying was gone. So the thought is maybe your horse isn't the problem. Maybe the problem is being caused because you're stuck in your own story. And the second thought that I'd like to offer you to borrow or to try on is that you have the option to choose your story. Even if something isn't strictly a fact, but rather something that you think and feel very deeply and passionately about, it's okay to keep that as part of your story. You just need to be clear and conscious that you are choosing that thought. This will also give you a really great opportunity to assess the emotion attached to the thought. So, does the thought make you feel good or bad? And there's a whole spectrum there, but you get what I'm saying. Are you empowered or disempowered? If you break down your story and realize that you're choosing a thought that makes you feel disempowered, we need to talk and please DM me. But the thought I'm offering you is that you have the option to pick and choose your story, pull it apart, and keep only what suits you. So, are you stuck in your own story? Your actionable steps for today are number one, I want you to pick one of your horses and I want you to brain dump all of your thoughts and feelings about this horse. We're going to let your story flow out onto paper. And I actually want you to do this either with pen or paper or on your phone, whatever. I just want you to be able to see all of the thoughts and feelings in one place. So don't just think about them, put them down somewhere. You are just going to list anything that comes to your mind when you think about that horse. So is it your goals with that horse, how the horse responds to you, anything about their health or their rehabilitation, how's their training going, how's their competing going, how's your partnership, anything. To get the actual story out, we need to do this quite quickly and from more of an unconscious place. So I want you to start the clock and then I want you to write down as much as you can for 10 minutes and then stop. And the reason we do this is because our mind actually starts to make up a secondary or associated story if we leave it for too long. It starts making up new pathways and new connections, and we don't want it to run loose just yet. All we want to know are your immediate thoughts and feelings about your horse. And then number 2, we are going to decide what is a fact and what is a thought or a feeling. So remember a few episodes ago when we talked about a circumstance being a fact, provable in a court of law? This is your moment to put that understanding to the test. So I want you to take a pen and cross out or strike through anything that is a fact that you believe could be proven in a court of law. Things like, he's 16 2 hands high. He's a thoroughbred. In 2016, he ruptured his collateral ligament. Things that can't be proven are things like, he's horse shy. Because I honestly don't know if that was a problem I was causing or not in the end. Or can't be proven, he's a difficult horse. Again, that is a thought. So give it your best go removing all of the facts from that page. And the last step, number 3, is from here we are going to choose your thoughts. So now that we've crossed out all of the facts on your page, your story about your horse, we should only have thoughts or feelings left. And I want you to read each of them and leave the ones on the paper that you'd like to keep. So these are the thoughts that are likely to empower you or make you feel good about your horse. These are the ones that serve you. You might also choose a few about their rehabilitation or their current health state. That might serve you to treat them with enough care that you want to keep them. And that's okay. That is your choice. But I want you to circle the ones that you would like to change. So these are the parts of your current story about your horse that are not serving you. They make you feel disempowered. They keep you stuck. They're outdated. They're stopping you from reaching your goals. And with that, we have broken down your story to the point that you are more aware of what's driving you. Then the next task would be to think about what you could replace those thoughts with. But I just wanted to start with the awareness this week. And I hope you see that you could apply this not just to your horse, but perhaps also it's a way of assessing your thoughts or your story about a certain method. So let's say barefoot versus shoeing. Or how about assessing your last competition by breaking apart your story? Or how about helping you in broader life, breaking down your story about your children or your partner or your career, wherever? It's time that you start to have an awareness of your story, and it's time that you start to choose parts of your story so that we can make sure that you're not stuck in it. So please DM me on the socials once you've done your brain dump. I am super keen to hear what your story was and how much of it you plan to keep versus change. My goal with this podcast is to help you more effectively rehabilitate or train your horse by focusing on your mindset and your management. We will balance your life inside and outside of the arena so that you can find your version of a stable relationship. Now, before you go, I want to remind you that to celebrate the podcast launching and to thank you for all of your support so far, I am giving away free introductory performance coaching sessions during July. I've really loved meeting everyone who has signed up so far, so thank you. This is the perfect opportunity for any equestrian who is perhaps feeling a bit confused or stuck with their horse. In particular, you know I love the rehabilitation cases, but any type of stuck is welcome, competitive, non-competitive, anyone, even if you feel stuck in life more broadly. You are welcome to bring a specific mindset or management topic to chat about, or just come as you are, and we will have a chat and find our own way in the session. There are some prompts in the sign-up sheet, so just fill them in as best you can, and we will go from there. The sign-up link is available now in the podcast show notes and in my social media bios at Journey of Equine. If you think you'd like a chance at performance coaching, or if you know another equestrian who would, please head straight to the link and sign up. And if any of the remaining time slots don't suit your current time zone, can you please just send me a DM on Instagram or Facebook? And if there are any available, we can work together to swap the time to suit us better. And with that, I just wanted to say a big thank you for tuning in today. Please subscribe, follow along on the socials. The links are in the show notes. And have a wonderful week, everyone. I will speak to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. My goal is to help you more effectively train or rehabilitate your horse by focusing on your mindset and management, both inside and outside of the arena. If this sounds like something you'd like one-on-one help with, or if you'd like to follow along for more, come and join me on Instagram or Facebook @Journey of Equine. The links will be in the show notes. Have a great week, everyone.